The viral video of a beating and knife attack in Chicago suggests the assault had racial overtones. CBS's Dean Reynolds tells us the victim is described as a mentally challenged teenager.
Smack him again.
In the video, he is choked and repeatedly called the N-word. His clothes are slashed and he is terrorized with a knife. His alleged captors repeatedly reference Donald Trump.
Police are holding 4 people in connection with the attack.
This is CBS's version of the awful kidnapping that occurred recently. They manipulated it in order to fulfill the political purpose of making it sound as if white Trump supporters tortured a disabled black teen, but instead it was reversed. It is sadistic on its own to twist a horrible act such as this into what is not. With what is known throughout the internet to the public due to other news sources and the videos released online, CBS basically gave out more evidence to prove that the media manipulates and propagates information to an extent that should never occur. And that flows into what this video is about: Donald Trump and John F. Kennedy.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed.
It might never be clear what JFK meant by secret societies in his cryptic speech. Some say communists, some say the so-called Illuminati, but it is clear that he is opposed to media censorship and lies, that he had an anti-establishment agenda. Executive Order 11110, an order that is what could have led to Kennedy's assassination. I'll dive deeper into that later in the video. Essentially, the order would have allowed currency to be printed without the Federal Reserve. And to you skeptics about the content of the order, trust me, I actually read it. In fact, there's a link to the order in the description. With all of that in mind, let's go back to Trump and look at what he has actually said.
There is nothing the political establishment will not do, no lie that they won't tell, to hold their prestige and power at your expense, and that's what's been happening. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. As an example, just one single trade deal they'd like to pass involves trillions of dollars controlled by many countries, corporations, and lobbyists. For those who control the levers of power in Washington, and for the global special interests, they partner with these people that don't have your good in mind. Our campaign represents a true existential threat, like they haven't seen before. This is not simply another four-year election. This is a crossroads in the history of our civilization that will determine whether or not we, the people, reclaim control over our government. The political establishment that is trying to stop us is the same group responsible for our disastrous trade deals, massive illegal immigration, and economic and foreign policies that have bled our country dry. For them, it's war. And for them, nothing at all is out of bounds.
It is clear Trump holds the same position as John F. Kennedy on the political establishment. And now let's compare their policies as well. Let's also compare them to the Libertarian Party's policies, just for kicks. Again, with Trump, I'm taking into consideration what he actually said and not what the media twists it into and makes it out to be. Kennedy wanted tax cuts, reduced tariffs, free trade, some deregulation, and was clearly a fiscal conservative. Some might have you believe that he was economically liberal due to his status as a Democrat, but they're very, very wrong. Read up on it if you like. A Time article is in the description. Kennedy started out in Obama's position, just after a recession, although not as large as the previous one in 2008. However, he ignored the pressure to take an FDR or Obama approach and took the conservative approach. Kennedy's social policies include, most famously, the Civil Rights Act. Although Johnson put it into place, it was originally conceived by Kennedy, placing Kennedy in the socially liberal category. And as I showed earlier, Kennedy is anti-big government. Trump, as I showed earlier, outside of border control, is also anti-big government. Before I continue, view these two situations in 4 different clips.
Listen carefully, can you hear it? Now the brass.
I can hear it. Look outside, Mummy. They're playing music. How did he do that?
Wait, here comes the crescendo. How beautiful is it not?
Our job is to report the news, not fabricate it. That's the government's job.
On the lighter side of things, seems that the crew responsible for the demolition of the Old Bailey wanted to give the old girl a grand, albeit improvised, send-off.
Although the demolition had been planned for some time, the music and the fireworks were, according to the crew chief, definitely not on the schedule.
Those two were from V for Vendetta, a fictional dystopian movie, and the deception is quite obvious. Now look at these.
Our country is in serious trouble. We don't have victories anymore. We used to have victories, but we don't have them. When was the last time anybody saw us beating, let's say, China in a trade deal? They kill us. I beat China all the time. All the time. When did we beat Japan at anything? They send their cars over by the millions. And what do? When was the last time You saw a Chevrolet in Tokyo. It doesn't exist, folks. They beat us all the time. When do we beat Mexico at the border? They're laughing at us, at our stupidity. And now they're beating us economically. They are not our friend, believe me. But they're killing us economically. The U.S. has become a dumping ground for everybody else's problems. Thank you. It's true. And these are the best and the finest. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists. And some, I assume, are good people. But I speak to border guards, and they tell us what we're getting. And it only makes common sense. It only makes common sense. They're sending us not the right people. It's coming from more than Mexico. It's coming from all over South and Latin America, and it's coming probably from the Middle East. But we don't know, because we have no protection and we have no competence. We don't know what's happening. And it's got to stop. And it's got to stop fast. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best.
That's what Donald Trump told an audience when he launched his campaign for the Republican nomination for U.S. president. And he didn't stop there.
They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists.
Those comments brought swift reaction from Mexico's foreign minister, José Antonio Meade.
He's a politician who doesn't know reality, who doesn't know the context he's participating in.
And he didn't stop either.
We hope that the electoral process in the United States brings forth a candidate who is aware of the statistics on the value of migrants and not a candidate who reflects ignorance and prejudice.
Other Mexican officials had even stronger words for Trump, calling his comments prejudiced and absurd, and saying he was clearly unaware of the contributions Mexican immigrants have made to the U.S. The outspoken Trump is widely seen as having little chance of winning the nomination as he joins an unusually large group of Republicans vying for the presidency.
It is quite eerie how deception can get close to that of a dystopian movie. He's referring to illegal immigrants, not Mexicans as a whole.
For a town hall, since the guy at the town hall said the president is a Muslim, that we have problems with the Muslims in this country, and we have to get them out. If something like that comes up again, would you handle it differently?
I don't think so, no, I don't think so. I don't know who the gentleman was, but he obviously disliked President Obama very much. I don't think I have to defend President Obama. He was very strong on his stance, and still I don't know who this guy was.
But some would say you're
I will tell you this.
He was.
Well,
you're defending the
remember
truth.
this. You're not saying I defended. I didn't respond. Yeah. Okay. It's the first time in my life I've caused controversy, but not responding. I thought I was very good. I didn't respond, and I ended up causing controversy. He said Muslims are a problem. Okay, that's what he said. Okay, are they a problem? You tell me. And I say, I don't see the people, and I use it often, that knocked down the World Trade Center going back to Sweden. Okay. So he said Muslims are a problem. That was part of what he said. Well, I mean, can you make the case that it's been tough? And by the way, most Muslims, I know many, are great people, just so you put it on the record.
So let's say, do you think Muslims are a problem?
Well, I think a certain segment are certainly a problem, and unless you want to be so politically correct where you want me to say, oh, absolutely not. I mean, you have ISIS, you have the migration, you have all of this stuff, you have... You know, a lot of people think you can end up with World War III over the Middle East. I've heard that for 25 years. There's something going on when you see beheadings. I mean, beheadings, we haven't seen that since medieval times, beheadings. You see dunkings, they call them dunkies, drownings, where they put people in a cage, dump them in the ocean. There's something going on. So when he said Muslims are a problem, am I supposed to say, oh, look, again, you know, you probably will put this point. I have great friendships with many people who are Muslim living in this building, okay, living here. But I have great friends. They're phenomenal people. And most of them are like that. But you certainly have, by the way, they think we have a bigger problem than we do. Okay? They think we have a bigger problem because there's a radical Islamic group of people that is brutal. And unless our country gets tough and smart, and unless we have the right leadership down, we're in big trouble.
Here, CNN attempts to corner Trump, but he wins and defends himself, giving a perfectly reasonable response. As of all religions, Islam does have radicals who attempt to be hateful and force their religion on others. I'm sure there are many other clips out there. However, I'm certainly not showing them all here and now. But there is one I wish to debunk that is quite deceiving.
I'm not going to let Wall Street get away with murder. Wall Street has caused tremendous problems for us. We're going to tax Wall Street. We're going to get rid of certain things that they should have. I've been talking about it very strongly. Certain things that they want, and they want them badly, and it's not fair to give it to them.
Candidate Trump criticized Wall Street, but President-elect Trump just picked a Wall Street executive for one of the most powerful positions in his cabinet. Treasury Secretary nominee Steven Mnuchin spent 17 years at Goldman Sachs before he became a hedge fund manager. And Senator Bernie Sanders had plenty to say about that when I got the chance to ask him about Trump's cabinet picks. Senator, we're starting to see the cabinet come together, and you've got Betsy DeVos, who's worth about $5 billion. Wilbur Ross, who's worth about $3 billion. Todd Ricketts, who's worth $1 billion. Steve Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary, who's worth at least $40 million. Although I think that vastly undersells.
Only $40 million?
I know. He's a piker.
And he got into the cabinet?
I know. Well,
I'm really quite shocked at poor people being able to get into the cabinet.
It is pretty remarkable. I mean, this is pretty unprecedented. This sort of plutocratic titans being named to these positions, some of whom have zero experience.
Chris, what's more, I mean, we're in Trump world right now, and what we have to understand is we're into show business. And that means that what you said during the campaign, you said that we are going to not cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and then you appoint Congressman Price,
Tom Price, yeah,
the head of HHS, who's made his life's work cutting Medicare. You talk about how you're going to be tough on Wall Street, and then you appoint a Wall Street insider to be Secretary of the Treasury. You talk about being tough on the establishment. Oh, we're going to take on the whole establishment, and you appoint the entire establishment to your cabinet. The hypocrisy would be really funny if it wasn't so sad in terms of the implications of what it means for working people in this country.
Steve Mnuchin is someone who was at Goldman Sachs, who, of course, he bought a distressed property in IndyMac, renamed it, and then foreclosed on a lot of people, which I suppose is one's right in the world of American financial capitalism. But what would you like to hear him? Would you like to hear him explain himself in those confirmation hearings?
Well, I think there will be some members of the Senate who will demand that he explain himself. Trump talked about, as you'll remember, Chris, reestablishing Glass-Steagall, holding Wall Street accountable. Well, we are going to demand that this nominee explain to us exactly how he intends to do that. But the hypocrisy of what Trump said during the campaign and the kind of appointments that he's making now is really quite laughable.
Do you see this? I mean, I've been talking to people, sources of mine, as I've reported on finance for a while, and I know people on Wall Street. I mean, there's this kind of people sort of looking around and saying, hey, this is actually looking pretty awesome. Like, we weren't quite sure, but there's this sort of mood. I mean, you see it on business networks. You hear it from folks on Wall Street. Like good times are here.
They're catching on to what Mitt Romney said a while back in describing Mr. Trump. He said, Donald Trump is a fraud and a phony. And now I think the folks on Wall Street and in corporate America are giving a sign of relief because, in fact, it turned out to be true. Forget about everything that he said during the campaign, how he's going to take on the establishment. He is going to reward his billionaire friends, and the middle class and working class of this country is in for some very, very rough.
Trump's cabinet positions consist of a lot of billionaires and millionaires, which opponents of his have used to pinpoint him lying about his anti-establishment agenda on the campaign, such as the Wall Street Insider. What these critics, such as Bernie Sanders, don't appear to understand is 1. He isn't even in office yet, and couldn't have broken his promises yet, and 2, they don't know what these cabinet picks actually want and why Trump actually appointed them. People who understand what's going on in the establishment very well know how to dictate policy and to potentially hold it accountable. Sanders' premature arguments and judgments are quite laughable at the moment. And one must also notice Sanders' hypocrisy. He goes on how one must support the middle class and be anti-corruption, yet endorses one of the most corrupt and anti-middle class people to ever run for president in Clinton. Notice what I did there? Anyways, to me his only real controversial picks are Bannon and his EPA pick. And even then, it's impossible to know what they actually think or want. The same thing is true for his whole cabinet. The media, which we all know lies and manipulates information, is not a credible source when it comes to these people. These people, what they've done, and the people they know that know them are the only credible sources of information. Another thing on the media, right before I get into Trump's policies, the media has fear-mongered and deceived the public to such an extent that some people are afraid of their lives, and it has to stop. Since I live in a liberal state, I know some were actually crying about the result. 1 or 2 that I know that were actually crying were actually quite smart and reasonable people. They just fell for the nonsense put out by the media. On abortion, Trump is pro-life, but not strongly. Recently, he was pro-choice, actually. He wants abortion laws to be left to the states. Kennedy was cited as being pro-life due to his opposition of Japanese systematic abortion. On drugs 25 years ago, Trump was completely against drug legislation. Now he just says he wants to leave it up to the states. On both of these issues, Trump might be being a little deceptive in order to win the support of the Republican base, who is pro-life and anti-drugs, avoiding the issues entirely. He also supports medical marijuana. Trump strongly supports closed borders, obviously due to his support of the wall between the Mexican and American border. Trump's economics are very similar to Kennedy's, wanting tax cuts on all levels, reductions of spending, and deregulation. But unlike Kennedy, he is against free trade, at least until people stop importing jobs overseas. Trump supports gays and trans rights, and is actually anti-police brutality, but for a strong and non-corrupt police force. Trump wants to get rid of the Department of Education and Common Core and is very pro-private schools and competition between them and charters. I'm particularly fond of this position, personally, due to my belief that the federal government should not and should never be in education. I might make a video on it later, actually. Trump partially believes in climate change, but thinks global warming is a hoax, and is in favor of nuclear energy, another market-made solution, or oil for energy. Seeing the current green alternatives as impractical, which I also happen to agree with because solar panels, in spite of government promotion, is responsible for only 1% of our energy supply. I believe we're close to finding the secret to nuclear fusion and should be fine until then, or when another market-based energy supply is created. Trump wants to cut the EPA entirely, and also wants to listen to environmental activists. An interesting position, to say the least. Trump is very much in favor of guns and ending gun restrictions and restrictions on public property of gun ownership, which in my mind is actually a good idea. I know some of you Democrats are going to disagree with me, but that is because this simple principle: guns are inanimate objects that can be used as weapons. They don't kill people, people kill people. And the whole reason those shootings occurred at those movie theaters and even at those schools was because everyone at the school was disarmed and could not protect themselves. Now, I'm not saying that students should have guns in school, or maybe even the teachers should have guns, but perhaps you could have a safety gun in place in case someone breaks in or something like that, or some type of weapon, instead of leaving schools defenseless. Of course, this can also happen in other public places too. So, yeah, but it's your own choice in what position you support. Let's continue. He also believes in animal rights and refuses to go to circuses, pointing to him wanting to market into most of these issues since he is against government involvement, which is a very libertarian position. Trump and Kennedy are both womanizers who have/had controversial sex lives, and due to Kennedy's success in just 2 years of presidency, I believe that a candidate's sex lives are irrelevant in politics. Bill Clinton wasn't impeached because he had an affair with Lewinsky, because he lied about it under oath. Now, if Trump is actually guilty of some crimes such as sexual assault or rape, that is a completely different story. In foreign policy, Trump is actually isolationist, except when it comes to ISIS, which he sees as a threat to the world. Kennedy tried to be as isolationist as possible, for two reasons. One wrong move will lead to a nuclear war, and the fact that he respected other countries' sovereignty. Kennedy and Trump are both similar in many regards when it comes to foreign policy and domestic policy, which should speak to Trump not being scary, and in fact perhaps a genuinely good president. Kennedy was a bit more liberal when it came to social policy, having the government handle issues such as the environment and healthcare. If I haven't stated Kennedy's position, it simply isn't clear, as those issues weren't the issues when he was in office. The Libertarian Party describes itself as being socially liberal and economically conservative, with libertarians throughout the party ranging from low centralization status to complete anarchists. I am including the Libertarian Party in this video as well, and showed libertarians that they shouldn't be upset, but instead should be happy, at least for now, that Trump won. 1. The Libertarian Republic called Trump more libertarian in several positions, including property rights, than the Libertarian nominee Gary Johnson. 2. Trump might be the most libertarian candidate to win since Kennedy. Much like right-wing libertarians, Trump is very anti-establishment, yet supports a free market in the solution it offers. In fact, outside of trade, Trump aligns perfectly with a statist, capitalist, anarchist libertarian position. Borders are something that libertarians disagree with each other on. Some want closed, some want open, and in the case of anarchists, they want borders determined by people's private property. Abortion is the same as well. Libertarians can be pro-choice and pro-life, so in reality, Trump was not only the most libertarian candidate in the whole election, but his victory means a victory not really for the Republican Party, but actually for libertarians. There's a reason Trump has alternated around parties, and that is because the parties, Democrats and Republicans, have not only shifted their positions over the years, but he has never aligned strongly with either of them. So why did I begin with this video, and why do I continue this video with Kennedy? This is because his name is very synonymous with his assassination, and Trump might be the president with the highest likelihood to be assassinated ever. Yes, Kennedy actually comes in second due to his links to the mafia, but Trump has so many dangers, it's not even funny. Trump has whoever doesn't want the population to know about the activities that he would perhaps speak about if he was telling the truth. The liberal Democrats were so violent and afraid to use the media, and it was radical Republican supporters who voted for him because of what the media said and not his true positions. And also, he has an even higher danger. Notice how I said he has recently shifted to more Republican values on abortion and drug legislation? There's one more interesting shift. On multiple occasions, he has called for the execution of Chelsea Manning, Edward Snowden, and Julian Assange. Yet he wants to appoint someone known for leaking extremely classified data to his wife as a Secretary of State, and express the desire to tell the truth to the American people. Trump is a manipulating businessman and an excellent politician as a result. He has called for the executions now and in the past in order to avoid condemnations not only by the media, but by the government as well, and potential accusations of treason and ineligibility to be president, like what has recently happened when he trusted Julian Assange on the Russian hacks. He speaks simply and narcissistically, when many people, including every single person he's met in private, has said he is kind and polite, the opposite of how he speaks in public. I think it's obvious he does that to appeal to the American people and their patriotism. I noticed in my last video that our society rewards and inspires narcissism. Trump took advantage. Nearly everyone speaks differently in public than they do in private. Most try to be formal, but Trump took a calculated. This makes him not just more relatable, but also makes him appear more honest when, as I have already stated, with his manipulation of his positions and information, he really isn't. No one could possibly make billions of dollars and be an idiot. Trump is a genius. He also is just like every other politician except with one key difference. He's old and rich, perhaps uncorruptible as a result, and doesn't have many self-interests to look out for, unlike most candidates. This makes him not just more relatable, but also makes him appear more honest when, as I have already stated, with his manipulation of his positions and information, he really isn't. No one could possibly make billions of dollars and be an idiot. Trump is a genius. He also is just like every other politician except with one key difference. He is old and rich, perhaps uncorruptible as a result, and doesn't have many self-interests to look out for, unlike most candidates. The presidential campaign harmed Trump and his reputation beyond repair, and
anyone who challenges their control is deemed a sexist, a racist, a xenophobe, and morally deformed. They will attack you. They will slander you. They will seek to destroy your career and your family. They will seek to destroy everything about you, including your reputation. They will lie, and then again, they will do worse than that. They will do whatever's necessary.
he saw it coming. Trump has more motives than any other president, perhaps in history, work for what he believes is best for the common good. Perhaps for his family, perhaps for his kids, perhaps just for the common welfare of everyone. However controversial, I recall promising an explanation of the Executive Order 11110 conspiracy theory. Let's start with the Federal Reserve. Formed in a secret meeting of global elitists, the Federal Reserve Act was put into law by Woodrow Wilson, ensuring the end of American freedom and prosperity before it even began. Doesn't that mean that Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again," is a lie? Arguably yes, but recall, ever since the 60s, the United States has been the most powerful country on earth. So it depends whether you prefer power or freedom. The Federal Reserve Act gave the central bank control of the U.S. currency, which it lends to the Treasury, which it lends to various banks across the country. It splits the U.S. in infinite debt through the greatest scam in U.S. history. However, it still isn't clear to anybody exactly what goes on in the Fed. All people can know is how the Fed frauds the country, not exactly why. The Kennedy theory alleges that since he tried to take power away from the Fed, he was assassinated. It is impossible to know whether this is true or not without access to information simply inaccessible to the public. But consider this: Lincoln, Garfield, Reagan, Kennedy, and Andrew Jackson all opposed to a central bank. Each of them were either killed or nearly killed in an assassination. 6 presidents have been shot at. 5 of them threatened the possibility of a central bank. Although, I guess one could remove Lincoln, since Wilkes Booth is proven to have been motivated by the Civil War. Now consider this: the latest audit the Fed bill, proposed by the surprisingly alive Rand Paul, was rejected by the Senate in spite of it actually giving more power to Congress. Evidence and enough a little too coincidental coincidences exists that the basic premise of the Federal Reserve conspiracy theories are not theories at all, but is just a plain, true conspiracy. Trump has remained, perhaps intentionally, silent on the Federal Reserve. However, he has said he would love to return to the gold standard, which would take away the Fed's power to create money out of thin air and perhaps improve the U.S. economy immensely. It was in the 70s when the US economy really stopped growing for good, which also happened to occur around the end of the gold standard. All this being said, I don't trust Trump. I already went over how he lies and manipulates to an extent. Basically, in conclusion, I would like to say, take everything with a grain of salt. Consider the real Donald Trump, which I have already explained. And a bit off topic, don't harm people for their opinions. It's not only disgusting, but it won't get you anywhere.